The footage you're seeing on screen right now was taken from a home security camera just a few houses down from where Joaquin lived with his family. It shows the teen on his bicycle as he rides off in the direction of his high school. The school was only about 6 blocks away, and it was a journey that Joaquin had made dozens, if not hundreds of times before. But what neither he nor anyone else knew was that this time was special. You see, this video had captured the last trip that he would ever make to school. At around 8 p.m. that same evening, Joaquin's mother, Mariela, and his father, Martin, were getting ready to sit down for dinner. The couple's 4 other children were already there, and everyone was patiently waiting, but Joaquin still hadn't arrived home. This was despite the fact that his classes were supposed to have let out about an hour and a half ago. But that day, he was definitely supposed to be in classes in the afternoon, and those classes were scheduled to end around 6:30 p.m. Now, initially, no one was overly concerned about Joaquin. His mother knew that he would often go to his aunt's place after school because she also lived nearby, and Joaquin was very close with his cousins. In fact, the whole extended family was very tight-knit. Still, everyone at the house was getting hungry, so Mariela asked Martin to call her sister to tell Joaquin to kind of get a move on and come home so that they could eat. This is when things started to get scary, though. When Martin made that phone call, his sister-in-law told him that not only was Joaquin not there, neither she nor his cousins had seen him at all that day. Upon contacting Joaquin's school, Mariela and Martin got even more alarming news. Officials there said that their son had been marked as absent from his classes that afternoon. This was particularly upsetting for Mariela because she had actually called the school that day to tell them that Joaquin left the house a few minutes late. So when she heard this, Mariela was like, "What do you mean he didn't go to class? I specifically called to tell you he would be there. Didn't anyone notice or think that was weird?" What was worse, over the next few hours, Mariela and Martin received mixed reports as they and school staff started reaching out to other members of faculty as well as Joaquin's classmates. At least one teacher thought they remembered saying hi to him as they headed into the building that afternoon. But students said the complete opposite. They couldn't recall seeing him at all. This included Joaquin's best friend, Leandro. When Mariela called and spoke to him over the phone that night, he was adamant that he hadn't seen Joaquin that day. This was when she and Martin decided to call the police. Unfortunately, from the sounds of it, authorities didn't take the situation all that seriously when Joaquin was first reported missing. However, that began to change when an unsettling discovery was made. It's not clear who first noticed this, but Joaquin's bicycle was locked in the rack outside of his school. In other words, he definitely had made it there that day. The question now was, what had happened to him after that? Mariela and Martin were worried that Joaquin had somehow been kidnapped from the school's campus. They began making desperate posts on social media, trying to get the word out about their son's disappearance, as well as organizing searches of the local area. They were helped primarily by members of the community. Neighbors and other residents really stepped up to try and do whatever they could to help the terrified family. As this was going on, police were working more in the background and attempting to retrace Joaquin's steps. They did this mostly through recovering whatever surveillance video they could get their hands on. That's how they discovered the footage of Joaquin riding his bike to school on June 29th. The video confirmed that he left his house just after 2:57 p.m., like his mom had said. But this was far from the only important evidence that investigators would find. On July 1st, police called Mariela and Martin down to the local station. When they arrived, they told them, "We have something that you need to see." They sat the parents down and they showed them this image, which was taken from footage of another security camera right outside of Joaquin's high school. The image you're seeing is of Joaquin walking off school property right next to his best friend, Leandro. So clearly Leandro had lied to Mariela when he spoke to her on the phone. He had seen Joaquin on the day of his disappearance. But Joaquin's parents were incredibly confused by this. Joaquin and Leandro had known each other since elementary school and had been best friends since the 3rd grade. The pair were inseparable and basically did everything together, from countless hangouts at each other's houses, to celebrating birthdays, to taking their first communions at church. They couldn't understand why Leandro was hiding the truth from them. This is exactly what police wanted to know as well, which is why shortly after this, Leandro was also brought down to the station. During questioning, Leandro admitted that he had seen Joaquin on June 29th and said that he had only lied because he didn't want to snitch on his friend. When police asked him what he meant by this, he said that Joaquin had run away from home. He said that he was tired of his parents' strict rules and that he didn't want to live with his family anymore. As soon as they heard this, Mariela and Martin were like, no way. They told police that this didn't sound like their son at all. Joaquin was the opposite of a rebellious teenager. He was known for being quiet, reserved, and obedient. But more than that, he absolutely loved his family. When Leandro was pressed for more information, his story kept changing. He went back and forth on whether he actually knew where Joaquin was, as well as where he had supposedly told him he was going. There was something else that had caught the police's attention by this point as well. You see, that same surveillance system that had filmed the boys leaving school property had also captured Leandro returning alone. As he was heading back towards the building, he had momentarily dropped something, which turned out to be a cell phone. The thing was, it was well known that Leandro didn't have a cell phone. Once again, Leandro initially lied when he was asked about this. At first, he claimed the phone belonged to his dad, but when Mariela and Martin saw the device, they immediately recognized it as Joaquin's. Except the case had now been painted a different color. When he was confronted about this new lie, Leandro went back to that story about Joaquin running away from home. He said Joaquin had given him his cell phone so that his parents wouldn't be able to track him. Understandably, this all sounded incredibly fishy. Something was going on here, but Leandro wouldn't give police anything else other than a general direction that he said Joaquin had headed after leaving school. Well, as it happened, they were about to find out why Leandro was being so uncooperative, and it was worse than anyone had ever imagined. On July 2nd, so 3 days after Joaquin Sperani went missing, a team of volunteers decided to cover a couple of areas close to the school that hadn't been thoroughly searched yet. One of these spots was an abandoned property that was located just 100 yards away from the building at one of the other ends of the block. It's not clear why it took so long for a place like this to be searched, but what we do know was what was waiting inside once the group finally went in. It was actually one of Joaquin's cousins who was the first to go through the door of the decrepit house, and almost immediately after they did, they started screaming. Only a short distance beyond the entrance was Joaquin. He was lying face down on the floor, and he was dead. It was clear that he had been the victim of a savage attack. Close to his body was a length of metal pipe and a chunk of concrete brick, both of which had bloodstains on them. An autopsy would later reveal that Joaquin had died from severe head trauma and that he had suffered between 10 to 18 blows to his face, head, and upper body. As you might imagine, when Joaquin's parents were informed about his death, they completely broke down and just went to pieces. They were actually back at the police station when all of this happened, but they weren't alone. Leandro was also there and had been answering, or should I say not answering, more questions. But as soon as he heard Mariela and Martin yelling out in despair, he immediately launched into a chilling confession. Leandro admitted that on the afternoon of June 29th, he and Joaquin had gone over to the abandoned house because they planned on skipping class together. However, he said that while they were hanging out, they had gotten into an argument. Things got heated, he grabbed the metal pipe and the piece of concrete, and he ended up hitting Joaquin in the head. He claimed that he never intended on killing him, though. However, even this turned out to be a lie. You see, as police switched their focus from Joaquin's movements and began looking into what Leandro had been doing on the day of the killing, the whole thing became a whole lot more disturbing. Though this was never released to the public, police were apparently able to get their hands on even more surveillance footage, this time showing the courtyard of the abandoned house. That footage not only showed Joaquin and Leandro arriving together that afternoon, and then Leandro leaving alone, it also revealed that Leandro had been there earlier in the day by himself. In fact, he had spent about 40 minutes there that morning, and had also brought the metal pipe that was later found at the scene. Based on this, investigators concluded that the crime was almost certainly premeditated. They theorized that Leandro had met Joaquin outside of the school as soon as he got there that day, and then suggested that they ditch class and have a little skip day. Trusting his friend, Joaquin had gone off with him, not knowing that he was walking into a trap. As I mentioned, Joaquin had sustained numerous serious injuries, but what was notably absent were defensive wounds. It seemed that Joaquin had been attacked from behind before he ever got a chance to protect himself. As awful as all of this already was, police soon uncovered other extremely unsettling details. They learned from other students at the school that Leandro had acted completely normal after running back to class. He didn't seem like he was upset or worried at all. The only thing out of the ordinary anyone had noticed was that he spent a bunch of time painting what had turned out to be Joaquin's phone case during class that afternoon. Now, you're probably wondering, what would cause a 14-year-old boy to plan and brutally murder his best friend? And well, unfortunately, that's not something police were ever really able to get a clear answer to. Leandro stuck to his story about the random argument, and no one else in the boys' lives really seemed to have any idea what was going on. That isn't to say that there weren't theories. A number of people, including Joaquin's parents, said that he was being bullied at school. Despite being a shy and kind kid, a lot of other students apparently picked on him, and he didn't have a ton of friends. Of course, Leandro was supposed to be different, but at least one teacher said that they had noticed issues there as well. The teacher said that several weeks earlier, Joaquin and Leandro had suddenly stopped sitting together in class and seemed to be distant from one another. As far as school officials went, it seems that they were completely out to lunch. Apparently, they contradicted themselves about the whole bullying thing, saying that there was no record of any problems. According to Joaquin's parents, though, they had previously complained to the school's administration. Frustratingly, we'll likely never know exactly what Leandro's motive was. Whether it was a rift in he and Joaquin's friendship, whether he became just another bully who tormented him, or whether he simply wanted to steal a cell phone. After the whole awful truth was uncovered, Leandro was arrested, but there was still a pretty major problem. The minimum age of criminal responsibility in Argentina is 16, meaning that Leandro couldn't be held legally culpable for his actions. Joaquin's parents and family tried their best to fight this, arguing that with the level of premeditation here, that surely Leandro knew what he was doing and was a danger to society. They held marches, vigils, and demonstrations demanding justice. But in the end, the justice system decided that there was just no way they could hold him legally accountable. After spending a few months under psychiatric evaluation, Leandro was released into his parents' custody. As part of his release, he was required to continue undergoing long-term treatment, but that was basically it. He and his parents changed their names and moved to a different city. Stunned and heartbroken by this decision, Joaquin's parents took the only path left to them and filed a lawsuit against Leandro's family, the school, and the provincial government. In February of 2025, Mariela and Martin won the case. While Leandro's parents ended up being excluded from the lawsuit, it was ruled that the boys were both supposed to be in the school's care, and that officials there had been negligent. While this is certainly something, as Mariela pointed out, it still hardly feels like justice. Speaking of walking, this photo of the surveillance footage of Joaquin and Leandro has given me chills ever since I learned the context behind it. Seeing that big smile on Joaquin's face and knowing he was with someone he thought was his best friend is absolutely heartbreaking. It's an image I don't know that I'll ever be able to get out of my head.